When it comes to communication, that human connection is absolutely crucial.
Hi, I'm Helen Tupper, host of HSBC's Power Up podcast, a podcast that's all about helping people to perform at their best. And I'm delighted today that I'm going to be joined by Louisa Baldini and Louisa Preston, the co-founders of Composure Media, and also two ex-BBC broadcasters. Together, we're going to be talking all about communication. They're communication coaches. They specialise in helping people communicate with confidence and clarity. And they're going to share some of their tips, tools and techniques with us so we can put it into action at work. Louisa, welcome to the Power Up podcast.
Thank you, Helen. Thank you for having us.
So we always start our discussions asking our guests what is powering them up at the moment. So Louisa, what is powering you up?
Well, audiences have changed because of the digital age we're living in. And if you think about it, you're probably switching from screen to screen quite often, and video is getting shorter and shorter on social media. There are probably people watching and listening right now who may be at this moment considering stopping, switching over. Don't, please, because we've got lots of great tips coming up for you. So what's really powering me up is helping our audiences understand that their audiences have changed, and so they need to be even more skillful when it comes to communicating and presenting.
What about you, Louisa?
What's powering me up? Modern world again, as Louisa said, but the AI revolution. The AI, of course, it can help you structure your content for success. It can even write your scripts for you. But at the moment, it can't help with that human connection. And when it comes to communication, that human connection is absolutely crucial. And of course, Louisa and I can definitely help you with the human connection. And we're going to be giving you some tips as we go along in this podcast.
I'm looking forward to learning about it. So you're both experts in this area. This is what you're doing on a daily basis. But how did you know that this is what you wanted to do? How did you get into this world of communication?
Well, it was through journalism. And I think for me, growing up, I actually found the news really boring. And the way it was delivered back in the 80s was really quite dull. So when I became a journalist, I was really passionate about how can I make this interesting for people. I don't want them to switch off like I used to. What really drives me is being able to help people in business with all those tips and techniques and frameworks that I learned the hard way through nearly 20 years of my career, and especially the confidence piece, because people think that just because you're on TV that you find it really easy and you never get nervous. I used to get nervous every single time. And in the early days, I could cope with it and I could thrive on it. As my career progressed and I got more tired with young kids, it was even more difficult to cope with that high level of stress. I had to come up with my own coping strategies. And looking back, it's a real shame that it took the enjoyment out of it a little bit for me. So I think really building your confidence up is crucial. I usually say half the battle with public speaking is your confidence, getting on top of your confidence, understanding your confidence.
What about yourself? Was it the same journey, a slightly different one?
A similar journey, of course. But as a newsreader, I worked a lot in the corporate world as well. I did a lot of media training, and I kept hearing people were saying they were really struggling to get their voices heard. We knew that we had the tips and techniques that actually could help people really communicate with impact and get their voices heard.
This is a skill we all want to invest in and we could probably all get a bit better at. And it's something that you help people with all the time in your roles. So what tools or techniques have you learned that are most useful for people to adopt that want to invest in this?
Storytelling in business is absolutely crucial. And the reason why is if you take any audience, everybody has learning preferences. So any audience, you can think about 40% of that audience will be visual learners, another 40% of the audience will be auditory learners, and then the remaining 20% will be something called kinesthetic learners. The visual learners love the stories because of the visual images they create in the audience's head. The auditory learners loves to listen to the storyteller's voice, and the kinesthetic learners connect through the emotions of the story. Now, of course, storytelling as journalists, as reporters, was absolutely crucial. But in business, it connects. It makes your message memorable. So much more than the facts and the figures. We're, of course, not saying the facts and figures aren't important. They are. But from a memorability point of view and that connection on a human level, it really does work.
And you can use analogies or metaphors if you want to tell a story of something that is quite technical or quite dry. So there are lots of different ways of storytelling. One thing that we would say is be open to sharing a little bit more about yourself, because when you can bring your insights, your experiences, that is absolutely gold dust. If we're asked for one piece of advice, we always say structure of content. Because, as you'll know, and many of you listening and watching will know, there is that slight feeling of jeopardy when you're doing any public speaking, especially high stakes. So you want to feel in control. And if you know how you're starting, how you're ending, and what comes in between, that gives you that sense of control and confidence. So we teach a framework that we came up with called hook, line and sinker, to keep it really simple using fishing terminology. And the idea is you've got to grab your audience because attention spans are getting shorter, they're busy. You want to grab them before you deliver your all-important core business message. And then you want to support that with 3 key points in the middle. Rule of 3, really important, because people will not remember many more points than 3 points.
And the reason why we talk a lot about the rule of 3 is because people can remember things in threes. If you think about nursery rhymes and fairy tales, Goldilocks and the 3 bears, 3 blind mice, 3 little pigs. There is a reason they're all 3. It is memorable. As soon as anybody stands up and says, I've got 8 points I want to make, speaking for myself, I sort of think, oh, goodness gracious, we're going to be here for a long time. And by the time they get to the 4th point, I can never remember the first.
And then you want to end with impact as well. So hook, line and sinker. And that gives you a really great structure to pin your content on.
And can I just ask about that hook at the start? Is that a stat or is that a bit of data? What are we doing to hook people in?
Anything that the audience isn't expecting, basically. So it can be a statement, it can be something dramatic, it can be a question, it can be a poll, raise your hand if, but you keep it pretty simple, that question. So anything that's a little bit different, it could be a story, that anecdote about your business meeting last week. We just want to change up the staid old patterns of, hello, my name is, and I'm here to talk to you today about ... because that isn't particularly impactful.
I love it. Hook, line, sinker. Got it. Louisa, what do you think? Tools, techniques that can help?
Jenga technique.
Okay, tell us more.
We've all played Jenga, have we not, in our youth?
Yes.
We love the game. Apply that to communication, especially written communication, actually. That idea of distilling information down. As journalists, when we would write our television scripts, we would always keep cutting, cut until the last minute. You've got to do that in business. That idea of pulling out maybe words that aren't necessary, phrases, whole sentences, cut it all out. And it's interesting, we always say, before you present that pitch or presentation, you have to write a script out in full. And we know in business, people are always short of time. They say, I haven't got time to write a script. But actually, you've got to make sure that your thoughts are organised logically. And without writing that script, you can't achieve that. And there is the tendency, experts, because they know it all and they talk about it day in, day out, they get up and they think they can deliver. Waffle sometimes creeps in. And they move from this tangent to the next. And actually, the audience can't keep up. So write that script in the first instance, then take it down to bullet points and ideally present even without your notes. But of course, you can sometimes have some bullet points. But if you use that Jenga technique in the first stage of writing that script and really pull out any bits of information that aren't vital to have, you will be more impactful when you come to deliver it.
It is interesting. I do think we waffle because we're trying to say so much in such a short period of time. And as you're saying, like the real message that you want to land, the vital message gets lost in the waffle.
Exactly. You've got to make sure you are thinking about what is my core message. If I only leave the audience with one thing, what do I need it to be?
Amazing, really helpful. Hook, line and sinker and Jenga, and I'm going to be more impactful in my communication. So as presenters, you spend a lot of time at work in front of the camera. Have you got any tips on how we can present with more confidence at work?
Well, speed of delivery is absolutely crucial. That can transform how you come across as a communicator overnight. And actually, what surprised me most when I moved from the world of broadcasting to the business world is I would say to people, how many times have you practiced that pitch or presentation? And they may have said, oh, well, I've practiced it 10 times. And I'd think, oh, well, that's very good. And obviously you practiced it out loud. And they're like, no, I practiced in my head. I'm like, what? You're delivering a pitch or a presentation and you haven't practiced out loud? As a newsreader for 20 years, every single script, and I wrote all my own scripts, I rewrote everything, every single script, before I walked into that studio and delivered it live on air, I would say it out loud in the newsroom. And that happens across newsrooms right across the country, because you've got to hear what it sounds like before you deliver it for real.
I'd be walking down the road to my live position for the 1, 6 or 10 o'clock news, practicing out loud. So yeah, you're absolutely right, Louisa. You've got to practice out loud. You've got to hear your own voice. And that builds the muscle memory for what you're talking about, especially if you're talking about something a little bit different or something new. That's so helpful.
Of course, when we are feeling those nerves, the butterflies in the tummy, the sweaty palms, and we stand up in those high stakes moments, we all speed up. And Louisa and I are guilty of it. We were guilty of that on television as well. If you do slow down, it transforms how you come across. And if you think of any of the great orators that you really respect as communicators, they all have one thing in common. They have a great pace of delivery and they use the pause really effectively. And of course, filler words, Louisa.
Yeah, reach for a pause instead of a filler word.
Okay.
You can't do that if you're talking really quickly, if you think about it. So it's another really good reason to slow down.
So filler words might be, and I say this knowing this is my filler word.
We're all going to do it now.
I start every sentence with the word so, and you're saying swap so for a pause. And that's easier to become conscious of if you're talking more slowly.
Exactly.
It's some really, what you're saying, I think, are some really simple things that everybody can apply. But I think we're all doing so much and trying to get it done all the time that we're not always thinking about how we're coming across and how important communication and making sure these things are in place are. What other tips, Louisa, would you share with people from your experience?
Getting enough sleep is key. If you get less than 6 hours, it really affects your self-esteem. And then using confidence boosters and not just paying lip service to them or thinking they're reserved for performers. Things like saying a mantra to yourself. I used to say, this is my moment. As I was standing in front of the camera waiting to go on air, this is my moment. And it would just remind me to try and embrace that moment, even though I was maybe feeling really nervous. And other techniques like visualization work really well in business. Comes more from the sporting world, but using it in business, again, it gives you that muscle memory before going into pitch or present, for example. And then for physical nerves, there are other techniques, one of which, the power pose, we're going to maybe try it out with you towards the end.
Picking up on that, Louisa, you know, everybody suffers with nerves, whoever you are. And even superstars like Beyonce, and some of the audience will be very aware that Beyonce suffered with the nerves at the beginning of her career. She created an alter ego called Sasha Fierce because she didn't feel she could get on stage and be that performer. And it's interesting because when I look back at my career, I remember returning back to work after having my 2 daughters after maternity leave and thinking, I'm not sure I can go into that studio and perform at the level I need to perform at. And literally, I had to put my alter ego hat on and think, Louisa, today, you're not Louisa Preston at home with your 2 kids. You're Louisa Preston, the newsreader. And you need to get in there and take control. And if it helps you in the moment to put that alter ego hat on, like Beyonce did with Sasha Fierce, which she now says she doesn't need anymore.
It's interesting, isn't it, that an alter ego can serve us at a moment in time. It doesn't have to define us forever, but if it helps us build the confidence so we can communicate in a way we want in that moment, and then hopefully we've got the confidence to let it go in the future, it's quite a healthy thing. I also love the point you said around, you know, to enjoy it. When nerves get in the way of you experiencing and enjoying the moment, it's a real shame. So putting these tactics in place so that we can be present and we can appreciate our impact and hopefully the positive benefit it's having on other people. That feels like effort worth making if we can get to that outcome.
Yeah, absolutely, because actually all the skills are totally learnable, but what you have to work on yourself is your confidence. You can get pointers like we give the confidence boosters, share those, but only you can really work on your own confidence. But we really believe that you can't just give the practical skills without talking about confidence and having a foundation of confidence, because ultimately when you have that high stakes moment, if you haven't worked on both, then you could potentially not do as good a job as you should do.
And that plays into the whole, as you said, practice, practice, practice. You know, we spoke about speed of delivery. A great tip is, you know, film yourself delivering the first part of your pitch or presentation, film it at your normal speed, then film it again, slowing down. In the moment, you will think, oh my gosh, this sounds ridiculous. I'm going way too slowly. But when you watch it back, that will be the version where you come across with more gravitas.
Interesting. It's a really interesting experiment for everyone to do a bit of self-evaluation.
Yep.
If you're brave enough, it could be a good bit of data.
Well, a lot of people hate doing it because they hate watching themselves back and they're way too critical. Even the professionals, we used to hate watching ourselves back. But it's really, really important to improve.
So you mentioned the power pose. I feel like we should talk about it. I feel like I am going to be used in order to explain this to people. What is the power pose? How does it help people with their confidence?
So it links to open body language.
Okay.
And confident people have open body language. So in business, you need to be aware not only of what you're saying, but how you're saying it. The non-verbal communication, it accounts for roughly 80% of communication. So strong open body language. And the power pose is a pose you get into before your high stakes moment. So you take yourself off to a private space and you hold the pose for 2 minutes. And you're holding a strong open body pose, which is going to make you feel empowered. Basically, you can take a Wonder Woman pose.
Right.
So you see you've opened, or you
for
can
2 minutes.
hold your arms up in the air
Okay.
for 2 minutes.
What's great about this is if you suffer with those physical nerves, butterflies in the tummy, I mentioned that earlier, the sweaty palms, the shaky hands, doing something physical can really help you. So take yourself off to the bathroom before you go on the stage, hold the pose for a couple of minutes. Then after the couple of minutes, shake it out. So shake the arms out,
I'm good.
push your shoulders
feel
back.
The tension just when you do it properly,
It's like a bit of a reset.
The tension, you can feel it falling off your shoulders. So it's a really, really helpful for calming the tension, the nerves, and making you feel empowered. And it's also about the way you stand with your feet planted firmly on the ground, shoulder width apart. When I do the power pose, which I use now if I'm moderating or at a conference or hosting a conference, I do that, and feeling the solidity of the ground beneath my feet is so helpful and empowering. And actually it reminds me, before going on TV, I'd be standing in front of the camera waiting for my cue, and I might be sort of slightly slouchy, standing with my legs crossed. As soon as I got the cue, coming to you in a minute, I would straighten my legs, shoulder width apart, and feel really, really stable on my feet. So it's all linked to that.
And that's interesting, Louisa, because whenever we get somebody up to pitch or present to us in the moment, a lot of people will come to the front and they cross their legs. So that closed body language, it creates a barrier between yourself and your audience. But straight away, if you think about it, you're off balance. So we always say, plant your feet firmly on the ground, shoulder width apart, now deliver again. And normally they come across with more confidence when they do that.
I absolutely love how practical this is. I have never done that on a podcast before, so that is a new one for me today. But I think there are so many practical tips, like regardless of somebody's role or perhaps what they are having to communicate in the business, everybody can plant their feet. Everyone can try the power pose.
Absolutely crucial.
Great. So thank you both so much for sharing all of those insights with everybody. I know there's a lot that they are going to be able to put into action from today, but I'm always conscious that we want to make action as easy as possible. So if there were 3 things that we want people to take away from the conversation, what would you want them to be?
I think the first thing has to be structure. absolutely critical to any communication, whether that's written or spoken. You've got to hook your audience in from the very beginning, then communicate the bulk of the information in that middle section, and then finish with impact. The second thing has to be speed of delivery. I'm obsessed with speed of delivery and pauses, but also energy, whether that's in the office environment, whether that is presenting in front of your team, or even on a big stage. That energy, that performance, it has to be there to be a great communicator as well.
Great, thank you.
And finally, confidence.
I thought you might say that.
Very passionate about that piece. You can't just have the skills without the foundation of confidence. And again, it's whether you're going in to make a pitch or presentation in the office environment, or whether you are on the big stage at conference. So work on your confidence and use the skills and the techniques and frameworks that we've shared. And everyone, you can own your moments in front of your audiences.
Amazing. Thank you both so much for the conversation today. I've really enjoyed it.
Thanks so much, Helen. Thank you.
Thank you.